Melissa Fassel Dunn, and welcome to Broad Appeal, a show about boss women and queen bees who are writing and living by their own rules. Today we are interviewing Bridget from Boston Sensory Solutions, located right in East Milton Square, and Bridget's going to tell us about how she got to own her own business. So, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us.
Sure.
So, can you tell us a little bit about your background? So, a lot of people who come on Broad Appeal have these backgrounds that have nothing to do with what they're, currently doing. Now, yours actually sort of does. So, you're a rarity.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I think.
No, that's a good thing. So, tell us, so how did you get started in this whole journey?
Sure. So, I'm an occupational therapist. I have been an occupational therapist for about 20 years. I finished my OT degree at Tufts a long time ago and worked as an occupational therapist for other businesses, for other mental health agencies, community-based support programs for people, adults, and children with disabilities. And I did that for a long time. I really love the work of an occupational therapist. I then, through the years, got married, had my own kids, have an adult family member with special needs, so also began to experience what it was like to be a family member of someone receiving services, receiving mental health support, receiving occupational therapy, receiving school-based services, and then kind of became the mom at the birthday parties where the other moms would be like, can you read this eval? What does this mean in English? And really found myself kind of bridging the gap between supportive friend and fellow mom and clinician. And then started having more and more of those conversations in the parking lots and on the softball fields and at the birthday parties, and thought, why don't I just do this myself?
This is a huge need, obviously.
Right. Yeah. There's not another pediatric occupational therapy clinic quite like us right in this area. We're in Boston, so there's something a little bit to the west. There's stuff on the South Shore. But you and I both know how long that commute takes.
Yes, I do. I do know how long that commute can take, especially in traffic when it's after school, right? Which is when most people go.
And you have a couple of other kids who are trying to be at a couple of other locations in town, and it's the juggling. So I feel like I was in the unique position of being a clinician who understands the needs from a therapeutic perspective and through my professional lens, as well as being a parent who's lived through it and who knows the struggles with accessing services, implementing solutions at home, and really just decided we have a need here in the community, and I think I have a skill set that can match that. So let me give it a shot.
Yeah, and that's always perfect when you can identify the need and you know it's there. It is really helpful. I mean, that's like 50% of the battle, I feel like, And so in your background, your educational background before you did OT was actually in psychology, right?
Yep.
So how did that help everything? Did you already know when you were in psychology that you wanted to do OT, or did that evolve?
Didn't. I went to Boston College even longer ago and thought I was going in pre-med. So I guess I always had an eye towards healthcare.
Right.
And then just decided that wasn't really what I wanted to do. That many years of school, that amount of training, and really like that use of my skill set. So I transitioned to a psychology major and graduated and really wasn't sure what I was quite going to do with that. I knew it would be something in the healthcare field.
Right.
Counseling psychology also wasn't my ball of wax. It was really kind of a process of elimination.
Right.
And as I worked in the community-based programs with people with disabilities, I encountered occupational therapists. And I thought, wow, this is really more what I'm interested in doing, really helping people become as independent as possible in their own life roles and in the own activities that they want to do in their lives, but from that healthcare perspective, from some medical training and occupational therapy school, some psychology, and really was able to identify that occupational therapy was a field I wanted to pursue. So
which is so nice
then I went
to
back
have
to
that
school.
Sort of direction and know what you want to do,
Yes.
Without a whole lot of deviation, a whole lot of trial and error. And you started out working with adults, right?
I did. I absolutely did. I worked with adults primarily with cognitive disabilities, a lot of physical disability with it, and then moved more into working with kids And then, of course, having my own kids and
Right.
seeing the challenges of raising a family segued my career into pediatrics.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's one of the beautiful things about occupational therapy. There are so many areas. It's a very strong
broad.
background in school. We have a lot of physical dysfunction training. We have mental health training. We have cognitive training. And then when you finish, you really can go in a lot of different directions
Mm-hmm.
and then change the course of your path a little bit as you go along, you know, working with different populations.
If you want to mix it up, it's not difficult to mix it up, you know,
Right.
and switch it up a little bit. So, now, and you worked in OT at VinFen
Yes.
for like 20 years,
Yes.
right?
Yes,
So,
yes. I went to work at VinFen when I decided to become an occupational therapist. I thought, I'll stay there for a year. I'll get my prerequisites done, and then I'll go back to grad school.
and then you're like, no, I'll just move in.
And I just never left.
Right.
I went into OT school thinking that I wanted to work in a hospital setting,
Mm-hmm.
in acute rehab. And as occupational therapists, we're required to do 2 rotations of 3 months of time in different settings. And I worked in a hospital setting for both of those time frames. And I was like, this is just not my thing.
Yeah.
The amount of control that insurance companies have over the services that are provided, and the lack of ability to really be creative and meet people where they really want to build skill and build function
Right.
wasn't there. It was a really quick turnover, obviously, in a hospital setting. There wasn't the opportunity to develop a lot of relationships with
Right.
the people and the families I was working with. And so I decided to stay at VinFen after I finished my OT degree and be the occupational therapist across their whole agency.
And when you say that it's more difficult, you know, having to adhere to insurance restrictions, do you feel like that's more of a problem in a hospital setting as opposed to outside of a hospital setting, or is it tricky no matter what?
I think particularly in rehab hospitals it is, because the insurance companies will dictate, or at least back then, you know, when I was working there, they would dictate how many times a week a patient had to be seen for how many minutes. And if you didn't meet that, then the insurance company would actually be able to deny the whole stay. So there was a lot of pressure from the administration, rightly so,
Right.
to meet those standards. And maybe you had a patient who didn't have the tolerance to participate in therapy for that long because they were so early on in their recovery. Or maybe you had another patient who was like eating up everything that you were giving them, but their insurance company didn't require as many minutes. I couldn't give them as much.
Right.
And so to have less ability to use my own clinical judgment, I think, in deciding how the course of therapy would go with an individual patient at a particular time in their recovery was really challenging.
Yeah,
for me.
that sounds really challenging. It sounds like you sort of couldn't do your job sometimes, in a way.
You couldn't use your own, I think, creative thinking and clinical judgment. You know, we really were having to deliver services in a way that the insurance company mandated instead of what our own training and education may have led us to think was the best course of action.
Right. So you touched on it briefly, your personal experience with developmental or sensory challenges. Can you talk a little bit more about that, like as a mom?
Sure, absolutely, without throwing my children under the bus.
Or alleged children.
Yes, exactly. No, so in a couple of ways. So during my work with adults with developmental disabilities, I became particularly close to one woman who didn't have involved families, an involved family, and she actually lived in the group home I managed right out of college. So the choice became, do I stay and work Christmas Day in the group home, or do I just take her home with me to my family? So we did that for a while, and I became particularly involved in her personally. And when I left that agency, which was before VinFen, I actually petitioned the court to become her guardian. She was in need of a guardian at that point. And that relationship has developed to the point that once my husband and I were engaged, we actually decided that she would move in with me, and then later him when we were married. And she still lives with our family.
So she's a part of your family.
Yes.
Yeah.
So a lot of advocacy, a lot of work, a lot of understanding what she needs best, both from a family, but also from that clinical perspective, and being able to advocate for the services that I think she needs and that will benefit her growth and development was kind of my first foray into understanding what it's like to be a family member of somebody with some of these challenges.
Right. I mean, you started with this adult woman, and then you had kids, and
Exactly.
then you were a mom, and,
Yes.
and Yeah, so it really is holistic for you, isn't it?
It
The
is.
experience.
It is. And I think I knew that for one of my children, there were some sensory challenges, right, from the early years with her.
Yeah.
But I also thought, I'm an occupational therapist. I must just be projecting my professional lens onto
I could see how that would happen.
the issues that my own child is having.
Right.
So I kind of let it go until somebody else said to me, have you ever thought about sensory issues? And I thought, I've been thinking about it for a couple of years now. And actually took her to an occupational therapist a little bit outside of the city and had a fantastic experience. But also looked at the services she was receiving there, and at the time insurance wasn't covering those services, and thought, we are paying a lot of money and we are driving a lot of hours to get these services, and your mother's an occupational therapist.
Right. Why are we doing this?
So, but I firmly believe you can't treat your own children. You just can't be objective like that.
Right.
But I can run a darn good home program. So we built a little sensory room in our basement, and it's play. That's the joy of doing occupational therapy from a sensory integration frame of reference. It's scooter boards, it's swings, it's monkey bars.
It's fun.
It's ball pits.
It's ball
pits.
A
lot of fun.
I mean, the ball pits.
The ball pits, the rock walls,
Exactly.
right? Who doesn't want to do that? So just playing in the sensory room with her every day really sped up the integration of a lot of her challenges and got us through our occupational therapy services a whole lot faster than I think it would have if we weren't that involved.
But yeah, the home, I mean, actually having a physical spot like that in your home is quite a gift.
Yes.
You don't even really have to improvise. It's right there.
It's right there, yes. And then we
fantastic
became the house that everybody wanted to play at because, we have all that on the rainy days.
I can understand that.
Yes.
So just if someone were to, someone's watching this and they're like, this is resonating with me. I think my child may have some sensory issues. How do they start? How do they address that? How do they address that concern and get it, looked into? What do they do? So
I think, well, first they can always go to our website. We're bostonsensorysolutions.com.
Okay.
There's a lot of information on there, a lot of stories. I think that's how I tend to connect with people, is listening to their stories and sharing some of mine and seeing what resonates and what rings true to people. So there are some stories on there. And just seeing if going through the website, it sounds like, oh, wow, yeah, that's my kid. Whether it's my little kid, 2 or 3 years old, or it's my teen.
Right.
And we do see some adults
right.
who maybe have realized over the course of their lives, like, I didn't address this when I was younger, and it's impacting me now. What can I do about it?
I mean, I still can't wear the turtlenecks, I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, and that's okay. But you figured out how to get around it.
Right, I went in the ball pit.
Right, good. And I think as adults, we have a lot more control over our environment, so we can kind of get around some of those challenges.
We can figure out our own workarounds. We know when we're being overloaded, whereas children...
They don't have the insight, and they also don't have the control over their environment to take those breaks or escape the situation or come up with a solution that will work in the situations that they're in.
Right.
So they can go to our website. They can call. The phone number's on there. I spend a lot of time just talking on the phone to families and saying, like, yeah, I think we might be able to help you, or no, this isn't our area. Try X, Y, and Z.
But this is, So there's all sorts of different options. So I know you offer traditional occupational therapy services, but you also offer other things. I know you have some clinics here and there and some special classes. Can you tell us a little bit more about those? And, and why you started those too?
Sure, absolutely.
You're like, I was getting too much sleep. So.
Yeah, exactly. I was a little bit bored. So honestly, I began this venture maybe 2.5 years ago, really thinking it was going to be me and 15, 20 families a week, kind of like
and that was
doing it.
Yeah.
And then it grew in a really positive way. So
how many families do you think you have now, if you were to guess?
I think we probably see about 80 families a week.
Wow. Okay. That's a far cry from 15 to 20.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I just hired another full-time therapist who will start next week. So that will grow.
So you did the OT and then you were like...
We did, So we do the one-to-one evaluation and treatment sessions around kids who have sensory issues. But I guess I just wanted to tell you too, like, really around kids who have any kind of OT issue, whether it's emotional regulation, motor planning, postural control, attention issues, emotional control, lots of different things. So we do occupational therapy from that sensory integration frame of reference and perspective, but we address lots of different challenges that kids might have in their day-to-day lives. And as we worked with the kids one-to-one, and I say we because I'm thinking of the other therapists in the clinic as well, it became clear that in the contained setting of one kid and one therapist in the treatment room, in the ball pit, on the swing, they were really making progress and doing well.
Right.
But then they go back to the playground, or they go to the birthday party, or out to the soccer field, and it all kind of starts to fall apart again. So that's when we built the groups. And we said, listen, these kids are in these situations that they aren't yet navigating as successfully as we want them to.
Right.
So let's bring the group to us. Let's create these challenging social situations and be there to provide them the support and the scaffolding to navigate it.
So these are social groups.
So we do social skills groups. We have done coping skills groups around worry or anxiety and anger management or frustration tolerance. We do a bike riding clinic a couple of times, which is a lot of fun. And I have to shout out to my husband who actually leads those for me. He's a teacher and an avid cyclist.
That sounds like fun. So this is for children who are struggling
who aren't able to ride yet.
How to ride their bikes.
Yep.
Okay.
And we've had...
And that's a few days, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like an intensive. We do 3 days in a row, an hour and a half-ish per day.
Yeah.
We used to do 2 hours, and the kids were kind of getting tuckered out by the end.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, my husband loves it, so he'll stay a little bit late and kind of help a kid out if they need it. 3 to 4 kids in that group with 2 instructors. And really, if you think about bike riding, there are a lot of skills that kids need to have.
It's a lot going on at once.
There's a lot. And so what we do with our OT lens is break that down. We do what we call a task analysis in OT. What are the skills that we really need to pull it all together and ride a bike? And so we just teach one skill at a time, and then bring it all back together at the end, and they're off and riding. So no guarantees, but he's had really good success.
It's pretty good success rate.
Yeah. So that's a lot of fun. We are running them right now, and then we'll start them again, fall and spring.
So usually fall, spring, summer is when you,
exactly.
Which of course makes sense.
Yeah. I think spring and summer is the best time to run them because then kids can use the skill right away.
Right.
When we're running them later in the fall,
they don't get as much practice time.
Yeah, they may lose it.
Yeah.
Because they might not have really owned it enough to next season pick up and get back on that bike.
Right. That totally makes sense. So
spring and summer seems to be the time that it makes the most sense to me to run those clinics.
And these clinics are great too because you don't have to get any prior authorizations from insurance or anything like that. These are just,
So fortunately and unfortunately, the groups are all private pay. So there's no insurance. Like you said, there's no need to fight the insurance company for it.
You also don't have to do that.
But you do have to pay for it.
Right.
Yes. Insurance companies in general do not cover groups for occupational therapy.
Okay.
They cover one-to-one treatment.
Yeah. Which at least they
Yes,
cover that.
At least we're there now.
So you mentioned the website. So if someone is, interested in getting evaluated, having their kid evaluated, or just kind of talking to you to figure out if their kid does need to be evaluated, or the groups,
right? How
should they get in touch with you?
So the website, bostonsensorysolutions.com.
Okay.
The clinic phone is 617-691-7140.
All right.
And you can follow us on Facebook. Boston Sensory Solutions.
And you keep that updated, which is fantastic.
I do. It's one of my primary modes, I think, of communicating with people.
Yeah.
Which as a medical practice feels a little funny, but I think it's the new word of mouth.
Yeah.
In our world.
I agree. And I feel like, nowadays that's what people go to almost first. It's kind of like Google, Facebook,
right.
So it does make sense.
Yep. We do keep a mailing list as well.
Okay.
So if people are interested in just kind of keeping an eye on what our offerings are, they can call or join the mailing list on the website.
Okay.
And then they'll get updates when we send them out.
This And congratulations, because
Thank
this
you so
is
much.
so incredibly successful in just 2 years.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We're having a great time.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So stay tuned because we are going to be making a wonderful cocktail. And then we're going to come back and Bridget is going to give us a life tip. Hey everybody, we're back at Broad Appeal and we're at the Industry in Adams Village with Donna today. And if you haven't checked out the industry, I highly recommend it. They have fantastic food and their cocktails are to die for. So today, Donna's going to be making a Lady Adams for us, which she named. She has named all the cocktails on the menu, and they're super fun to look at. So tell us what's in the Lady Adams.
So the Lady Adams has fresh sage. So we muddle the 4 sage leaves together with the lime. We get 2 limes.
And it smells delicious. Like you forget how good sage smells until it's right here.
We use all fresh herbs for a lot of our cocktails. It just makes the drink better. We use all our own fresh juices. We squeeze all of our juices in-house.
It does make it that much better when it doesn't come from a bottle or...
Totally.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we muddle that all together. We do an ounce of agave.
So now was that was just sage, right?
That was just sage and 2 limes.
2 limes, okay.
So we're gonna do an ounce of agave.
And can you tell us, agave is like a sweet...
Like a honey sweet syrup, basically. Same as agave, you know?
Yeah.
Agave, honey.
Yeah, sweet stuff. Okay,
stuff.
so we put
Better
the sweet
than
stuff
sugar.
in.
Better for you.
It's super healthy.
And then a ½ an ounce of lime juice.
And you can tell that's fresh squeezed. That looks
Fresh
delicious.
squeezed,
Yes.
And then we do 2 ounces of our Bacardi 8. And the Bacardi 8 is aged 8 years.
Okay, so that's our second grader rum.
Yes. And then
So why do you want an aged rum with this?
Because it has more of a flavor to it. It's basically more pungent in like a rum flavor, like it's a dark rum.
Okay.
A dark rum tastes better in this cocktail.
A little more
with the
intense
sage,
than
a little bit more
light...
intense, a little sweeter per se. But the cocktail then is topped off with Prosecco, so it kind of breaks up the sweetness.
And you've got the lime juice.
And we got the lime juice.
Right.
Yes, exactly. You want to shake it until all the ice breaks up. That way you know it's extra cold. And all the aromas of the sage and lime open up. You're going to double strain it to get all the ingredients out from the cocktail, any bits of sage or lime.
All right, so this is not a chunky cocktail. This is a strained cocktail. It smells delicious. It's like 2 feet away and I can smell it. It smells so good.
And then we are going to get our Angostura bitters and our Peychaud bitters. And we're going to do 3 dashes of the Peychauds.
Now, can normal people get these if they want to make this?
Yes, you can get this at the store.
This looks a little secretive.
Definitely.
Okay.
And then you're going to do 2 dashes of the Angostura bitters, which you can get at a liquor store as well.
Okay.
You are going to stir that in. And you're going to top it off with Prosecco.
And it's just a tiny bit of a floater, huh?
Yep.
Like an ounce or so, would you say?
Like a ½ an ounce.
Okay.
And you're going to smack your sage because that opens it up. And garnish on top.
And it is beautiful.
There you go.
All right.
There's the Lady Adams.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Oh, I got to try this. Can I
Yes,
try this?
definitely.
All right. Thank
There
you.
you go.
I'm going to be a Lady Adams. All right, here we go. Oh, that is wonderful.
Yeah? Good.
That is so good. You can really taste the aged rum too. I see what you're talking about. It's just a little heartier
Exactly.
than a white rum.
Yes.
All right. Well,
It's
thank
nice
you.
for the winter as well.
Exactly.
Yes.
Or anytime ever.
Or anytime.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Donna.
You're very welcome.
And for more drink recipes and to watch our show, visit www.broad-appeal.com. Thank you.
So for those parents who have children who might have an emotional meltdown or a temper tantrum from time to time, I wanted to offer you a quick tip that I like to use with my own family as well as in my practice. This is our cool down jar. We know as occupational therapists who use sensory strategies that deep pressure is very calming and organizing to our systems. So if we can teach our kids some activities that give them deep pressure when they aren't aggravated and upset, we are going to hope that we can then prompt them to use those strategies when they are having a tough time. So I like to write different deep pressure activities on these reusable ice cubes and keep them in my cool down jar. And then a couple of times a day, a couple of days a week, when everything is calm and happy at home, as I know it always is, I'll prompt my kids to go and pick an activity out of the cool down jar. So they'll just reach their hand in and they'll pull out an ice cube and they'll come up with birthday candle breaths, for instance. And they will they'll put up the number of candles that matches their age. So if my 3-year-old pulls out birthday candle breaths, I'm going to put up 3 candles and she's going to smell the cake and blow out the candle. And then she'll do it again until she blows out all 3 of her candles. And that's just a good practice for her to do when she is calm and well organized, so that when she is having a tougher time, I can prompt her to go to the cool down jar and pull out a strategy, or I can just remind her, why don't you try your birthday candle breaths right now to help yourself calm down? And there's a variety of activities in here. We have birthday candle breaths, we have wall push-ups, we have joint compressions, we have hair wiggles. We have all different kinds of things that give kids a lot of deep pressure that helps them to organize themselves when they are having a tough time. So I hope that helps the very few of you out there who have children with difficulties with emotional regulation.
Thanks again for joining us today. For more information about our show and to watch other shows, please visit broadappealtv.com. And for more information about Boston Sensory Solutions, you can visit bostonsensorysolutions.com. Thank you.